Some mornings feel like a battle before the sun even rises. Not against the world, but against ourselves. The alarm rings, but so do the doubts. The weight of yesterday creeps in, and before we've taken our first real breath, we're already behind, already reacting, already scattered. But it doesn't have to be this way. What if the first 15 minutes of your day could become the most powerful 15 minutes of your life? Not through motivation, but through mastery. In this video, I'll show you how to build a morning practice that rewires your focus, restores your calm, and puts you back in command. Not just of your schedule, but of your identity. No fluff, no hype, just practical philosophy, grounded in Stoic wisdom, and built for real life. If you've ever felt like your days start without you, like you're already catching up the moment you open your eyes, then this is your turning point. The truth is, who you are becoming is shaped not by what happens to you, but by how you choose to begin. 1 minute of clarity beats an hour of chaos. Stay with me as we walk through 7 quiet shifts that can help you rise, not just physically, but mentally, with power and purpose. And if this speaks to something inside you, subscribe and share your morning ritual in the comments. This space is yours too. 1. Own your first thought. The first thought you have each morning is not random. It is a signal, a decision point, and a mirror. Before you even sit up, before your feet touch the ground, your mind whispers something, sometimes quietly, sometimes with weight. That whisper, unnoticed by most, becomes the emotional undercurrent of your entire day. It may sound like "I'm late again," or "I don't want to do this," or worse, "What's the point?" And just like that, your day begins not with power, but with passive surrender. What you allow in that fragile space between sleep and movement matters more than you think, because it's not just about how you wake up, it's about who you are allowing yourself to become, one morning at a time. The mind, fresh from rest, is open and vulnerable in those first few minutes. It hasn't yet been hijacked by the noise of the world, and that makes it fertile ground. It's where discipline can take root, or where distraction can invade. If you reach for your phone before you reach for your own thoughts, then someone else's agenda sets your direction. You might not notice it at first, but over time this habit chips away at your sense of inner control. It makes you more reactive, more dependent on stimulation, and more anxious without knowing why. Stoic philosophy reminds us that the first battle of the day is always internal. And that battle starts with attention. Who owns your mind before the world even sees your face? Choosing your first thought doesn't mean forcing positivity or faking happiness. It means claiming your mental space before it's claimed for you. A simple sentence, chosen with intention, can anchor you. Today I choose calm. I will move slowly but with purpose. I don't have to do everything, I just need to do what matters. These aren't slogans, they're tools. Mental rituals that shape identity through repetition. Your brain listens when you speak to it directly. It doesn't care if the voice is loud, it cares if it's consistent. When you begin the day with deliberate thought, you send a message to your entire system. I am awake, not just physically, but mentally. I'm not drifting, I'm directing. There's power in that moment because it's yours alone. No one else can take it, and no one else will protect it for you. That first thought doesn't require silence, but it does require stillness. Just 60 seconds lying in bed, eyes open, focused on breathing, can create a boundary between yesterday and today. It allows space for clarity to enter before chaos arrives. And in a world full of instant reaction, having just 1 minute of ownership over your mind is an act of quiet rebellion. You're not running. You're not reacting. You're remembering who you are before the world tells you what you should be. A man who starts his day with inner command moves differently. He speaks calmly. He listens more than he talks. He doesn't confuse urgency with importance. That's not because his life is easier, it's because his mornings are cleaner. And when the first thought is chosen, the second one follows in line. Thought leads to action. Action leads to momentum. Momentum, once in motion, shapes behavior. And behavior, repeated in small moments, becomes character. This is not motivational theory. This is how human minds work. This is how mental resilience is built, from the ground up, one quiet moment at a time. If you've spent years waking up in a fog, letting fear, resentment, or exhaustion slip into your bloodstream before breakfast? It's not because you're weak, it's because no one taught you that those first 15 minutes are sacred. They are not a leftover space, they are your foundation. And like any foundation, if you build it with haste or ignore it completely, everything else becomes shaky. But if you treat that moment with reverence, if you meet yourself first before the world meets you, then something shifts. Not all at once, but undeniably. The rest of your day might still be hard, but you won't meet it as a man who has already surrendered. You'll meet it as a man who remembered to begin with intention. And that one choice, your first thought, can quietly change everything. 2. Movement before motivation. Motivation is not the spark that gets you moving. Movement is the force that awakens motivation. Most people wait to feel inspired before they act. They wait for the right mindset, the right mood, the right surge of energy. But the body doesn't work like that. Neither does the mind. In reality, your energy is not something you stumble upon by accident. It's something you generate, and movement is the ignition switch. Especially in the first minutes of the day, when your body feels heavy and your mind feels slow. The worst thing you can do is remain still and expect change to arrive on its own. The Stoics knew this well. They didn't chase motivation. They cultivated motion. They understood that a sluggish start leads to a sluggish mind. The quickest way to clarify a thought is through deliberate action. When you wake up and your first impulse is to delay, to retreat under the covers or stay seated in silence, that act sends a signal to your subconscious. Today will be passive, not purposeful. And once that message is sent, it echoes through your choices for the rest of the day. But if you rise, simply, directly, without inner negotiation, you break that pattern before it begins. It doesn't have to be heroic. You don't need a 5 a.m. workout or a perfect routine. What you need is a shift. From stillness to motion, from resistance to flow. The body is not separate from your discipline. It's the tool that carries it forward. And when you move it first, even just slightly, you create a new emotional state that wasn't there moments before. Try standing up and walking slowly to the window. Let the morning air touch your skin. Breathe in deeply, not as a task, but as a signal that the day has started. Roll your shoulders back. Let your chest rise. These are not exercises. They're reminders to your nervous system that you are not stuck. You're choosing to engage. Most people don't realize that fatigue in the morning often comes from a disconnected system. The mind wakes, but the body lags behind. Or worse, the body wants to move, but the mind is tangled in anxiety and thoughts from yesterday. That mismatch creates friction. And friction, when ignored, becomes paralysis. By moving first, even without motivation, you align your internal systems. You stop waiting for ideal circumstances and start creating them. This small act of rising, of stepping forward without needing to feel ready, is a declaration of self-command. It says, I lead my body, I lead my emotions, I lead my day. You no longer need to be pushed, you've learned how to pull yourself into motion. That's what builds the kind of strength that doesn't fade when life gets messy. It's not glamorous, it's not visible, but it's the kind of discipline that makes you trustworthy to yourself. In a world obsessed with shortcuts, this is a return to something deeper. A man who moves without needing a reason becomes a man who doesn't wait for life to hand him direction. He finds rhythm in repetition, confidence in consistency, and that starts the moment you ignore the temptation to delay and choose to rise instead. It's easy to underestimate this. After all, it's just a step out of bed, just a few deep breaths, just a slow walk to the sink. But in those small moves lies a deeper truth. You're not reacting, you're reclaiming. You're not asking for strength, you're building it. The mind may wander, the emotions may waver, but the body, when trained, can lead them home. And in that first movement, that quiet defiance of inertia, you give yourself something most people never find, momentum, before the world even knows you're awake. So the next time you wake up feeling off, stuck, or empty, don't wait to feel better. Don't wait to feel ready. Move first. Let motion reshape the mind. Because on the other side of movement is not just energy. It's clarity, control, and the kind of self-respect that only grows through action. 3. Silence is a weapon. Noise is not always loud. It's often subtle, constant, and invisible. And for most people, it begins before they even open their eyes. The phone vibrates, the screen lights up, the mind floods with notifications, headlines, missed calls, and the weight of everyone else's urgency. Without thinking, they reach for it. Not because they need to, but because the habit is stronger than the intention. What they don't realize is that this small gesture is not just a distraction, it's a surrender. They've handed over the first quiet moment of their day before they've even claimed it for themselves. But those who practice presence understand something different. Silence is not emptiness, it is space. It is clarity, it is power. In a world that begins in noise, choosing silence, deliberately, even briefly, is an act of resistance. And in the first 15 minutes of your morning, it becomes one of your most powerful tools. Silence is not a passive state. It sharpens awareness. It reconnects you to the only voice that actually matters, your own. When you begin your day in silence, even just for a few minutes, you give yourself a rare advantage. You start with alignment instead of agitation. You listen before speaking. You reflect before reacting. You decide how you want to feel before someone else decides it for you. The Stoics believe that the mind must be trained to respond, not to react. But there is no response without space, and no space without silence. So in that fragile transition between sleep and waking, you are either reclaiming your consciousness or renting it out. What you allow in the first will echo all day long. It's easy to underestimate the power of those 2 minutes sitting quietly at the edge of your bed. But that stillness gives you a perimeter, one that protects your intention, your mental clarity, and your energy. Most people skip this entirely. They jump straight into movement, into tasks, into digital noise, hoping to gain control by doing more. But control doesn't come from speed. It comes from awareness. And awareness is born in stillness. That's where the Stoic mind begins, not in reaction, but in observation. You watch the thoughts as they rise. You don't fight them. You let them settle. Then when you move with direction, not desperation. Imagine this. You wake up and you don't reach for anything. You let your hands rest. You let your breath find its rhythm. You look out the window or close your eyes. Not as an escape, but as a return to yourself, to your values, to what actually matters. That minute of silence is not a waste of time. It's the most valuable investment you can make. Because when the rest of the world comes rushing in, you're no longer caught off guard. You've already grounded yourself in something the world can't shake, your inner clarity. This practice is simple, but not always easy, especially when you've been conditioned to respond to everything instantly. But here's the truth. Every time you choose silence over stimulation, you strengthen your emotional boundaries. You teach your nervous system that it's safe to pause. You show your mind that it doesn't need to perform. And in that space, you find access to a kind of strength that isn't loud or aggressive, but calm, focused, and immovable. It's the strength of someone who doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. Someone who has already claimed the first victory of the day by not rushing to give their attention away. So tomorrow morning, before the day pulls you in 10 directions, give yourself the gift of 2 minutes. No phone, no voices, no agenda. Just you and the quiet. Sit in it. Let it feel unfamiliar. Let it even feel uncomfortable. That's where the shift begins. Not with noise, but with presence. Because silence, when chosen with intention, is not the absence of power. It is the beginning of it. 4. Decide, don't drift. Each morning, before the first email, before the first obligation, before the world demands anything from you, you are presented with a quiet choice, to lead your day or to be led by it. That decision is not grand or dramatic. It often looks like nothing from the outside. But inside, it's everything. Because if you don't decide how to show up, the world will decide for you. And the world rarely chooses peace, clarity, or self-respect on your behalf. It chooses noise. It chooses urgency. It chooses the path of least resistance. That's how drifting begins, not as failure, but as hesitation. One moment of delay becomes a day of reactivity. And over time, those mornings stack up and form a life that never truly felt yours. Drifting is quiet. It doesn't feel like a collapse. It feels like autopilot. You move through routines without presence. You do what's expected, not what's intentional. You let the external dictate the internal. And in that gap, your voice fades. The Stoics taught that freedom begins with self-command, not control over outcomes, but control over how you meet the moment. And in no moment is that more available than in the beginning of your day. That first decision, however small, creates momentum. When you choose to rise instead of roll back over, to pause instead of scroll, to breathe instead of rush, you send a message to yourself. I'm here and I'm in charge. This is not about perfection, it's about ownership. A tired man who chooses to sit up, stretch, and acknowledge his tiredness without resentment is more in control than the one who hides from it. A busy man who pauses to say, I will not carry yesterday into today, has already set a boundary that most never think to draw. Because deciding how to begin isn't about having a detailed plan. It's about knowing who you refuse to become by default. Every day you wake up, you are on the edge of one of two paths, the one you choose and the one that chooses you. The difference is presence. The difference is a decision. There are mornings when life doesn't give you a calm start. The baby cries, the alarm failed, the schedule is full before you even sit up. But that doesn't take the decision away from you, it makes it more urgent. Because in chaos, a single act of clarity becomes a lifeline. In that moment, you can still choose your tone, you can still choose your response, you can still choose not to give away your emotional center. This is what separates drifting from direction, not the absence of pressure, but the presence of purpose within it. Start small. Start where you are. When you wake up tomorrow, ask yourself, not out loud, not in some ritualized voice, but with quiet sincerity, what kind of energy do I want to carry into this day? What part of myself do I want to protect? What part do I want to strengthen? The answers may not come all at once, but the asking itself sets a frame. And once that frame is in place, the rest of the day fits inside it. That's how momentum is created, not from intensity, but from clarity. One aligned decision can do more than hours of scattered action. You are not lost because life is hard. You are lost when you stop steering, and steering requires presence, not perfect conditions. That's why this matters, not as a productivity hack, but as a practice of identity. You are becoming someone with every morning that passes. You can become the man who drifts or the one who decides. You can wait for life to calm down before you take control, or you can realize that control begins not when everything is quiet, but when you choose quiet within the noise. So tomorrow morning, don't wait for the perfect moment to lead your day. Create it, even if it's messy, even if it's late, even if you feel behind before you begin. Choose one action that says, I'm not just reacting, I'm building. Because once you decide, the drift ends, and the life you're meant to live starts taking shape, one quiet morning at a time. 5. Create before you consume. The world doesn't wait to take your attention, it demands it the moment you wake up. Before your eyes even fully adjust to the light, a screen offers you an avalanche of opinions, updates, requests, and distractions. And if you reach for that phone, that newsfeed, that inbox before you've reached into your own mind, then your day begins with absorption, not intention. You become a consumer before you've had a chance to be a creator. That first choice seems harmless, but over time, it erodes your sense of authorship over your own life. It pulls you into someone else's momentum before you've even checked in with your own. That's why the habit of creating, of doing something small that comes from within, is not just helpful, it's essential, especially in the first 15 minutes of your morning, when your mind is still unshaped and your attention is still pure. Creation in this context isn't about producing content or achieving something visible. It's about doing something that asserts your identity before the noise of the world tries to rewrite it. It can be as simple as writing one clear sentence in a notebook, reflecting in silence, sketching out your thoughts, planning your next move with focus instead of anxiety. These are quiet acts, but they are not small. They are the subtle ways you reclaim authorship. You begin the day not by responding, but by initiating. And that shift from passive to active sets the tone for everything that follows. The Stoics didn't wait to scroll. They woke to reflect, to prepare their minds, to shape their responses before stepping into the world. That wasn't ritual for tradition's sake. It was mental armor. It was inner preparation. When you start your day by consuming the world, You absorb its chaos. You adopt its urgency. You inherit its emotional volatility. But when you start by creating something, however small, you build a pocket of stillness that belongs to you. And that sense of ownership carries over. You are less reactive because you've already acted. You are more stable because you've already touched something grounded. You are no longer starting from empty. You've filled your mind with your own voice, your own values, your own vision. This doesn't require hours. 5 minutes will do. It's not about how long, it's about who begins your day. You or the world. Take a moment to write down one thing you're building, one thing you want to remember, one intention you want to hold. The act itself is small. The impact is not. Because when you claim those first few minutes with discipline and presence, your inner compass sharpens. You're no longer seeking clarity, you're creating it. That act builds momentum. And momentum makes decision-making easier. It strengthens your emotional boundaries. It filters what matters from what doesn't. Most importantly, it builds confidence, not from external approval, but from internal coherence. There's a quiet war happening every morning, between your creative energy and your craving for distraction, between your ability to lead and your habit of following, between the man you're becoming and the man who drifts through notifications, hoping to find something meaningful in the noise. But nothing meaningful comes from passivity. Meaning is made, direction is chosen. And the time to do that is when your thoughts are still your own. So tomorrow morning, before you pick up the device, before you open the app, take a moment to give something to yourself. A word, a breath, a sentence, a sketch, a plan. Not to impress, not to share, but to remember that you are not just a consumer of life. You are the one shaping it. And if you want to feel in control, focused, and mentally resilient, start by making something that belongs to you. Because when you create before you consume, you remind yourself quietly and firmly that your day belongs to you, not to the world's chaos, not to anyone else's demands. Just you. 6 small wins. Build self-respect. Self-respect doesn't arrive all at once, and it's never gifted by the approval of others. It's built slowly, quietly, in the small decisions you make when no one's watching, especially in the first minutes of the day. That's when the internal negotiation begins. Should you hit snooze again? Should you skip that short stretch, delay the first glass of water, or ignore the intention you set last night? Each time you choose discipline over comfort, however minor it seems, you cast a vote for the person you're becoming. That's the power of small wins. They are not loud, they don't ask for applause, but they accumulate into something unshakable: self-trust. And once you trust yourself, momentum takes shape, first inside your mind, then in how you move through the world. Many people chase big breakthroughs, but they overlook the structure those breakthroughs rest. That structure is built in repetition, in follow-through, in silent promises kept. Stoic philosophy doesn't glorify spectacle, it honors consistency. A man doesn't need to conquer empires to feel strong. He only needs to prove to himself that he can do the things he said he would do. And that proof begins before the world sees you. It begins when you rise on time because you said you would. When you make your bed, not out of obligation, but as a way of bringing order into chaos. When you hydrate, breathe, dress with presence, not because anyone else sees it, but because you do. These wins matter because they recalibrate your self-image. Each action says, I matter enough to show up for. When you keep even the smallest promise to yourself, your brain logs that memory and builds identity around it. It begins to believe you. And when you believe in yourself, your words carry more weight, your decisions feel more grounded, and your confidence doesn't rely on performance. It comes from alignment. That's why starting the day with small acts of discipline is not about productivity. It's about sovereignty. You no longer wait for the world to give you direction. You walk into it with clarity. It's tempting to wait for motivation to show up, to believe that you'll feel ready someday to overhaul your habits or pursue the version of yourself you've imagined. But motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes. What endures is the habit of doing what's right, even when it's not easy. That's why the first win of the day matters so much. It sends a message to your future self. You can depend on me. And in a world full of noise, empty promises, and distractions pulling your focus, Being able to depend on yourself is a rare form of strength. There are no shortcuts to this, but there are daily choices. 5 deep breaths before speaking, a few minutes of silence before you reach for the phone, choosing to reflect instead of react when you feel pressure rising. These are not insignificant. They are the early bricks in the structure of emotional resilience. The more consistently you lay them, the taller you stand, internally, not just in the eyes of others. And that's what Stoic self-mastery is about. Not suppressing emotions, but rising above reaction through daily practice. So tomorrow morning, don't wait for a perfect plan or an inspired state. Start small. Keep one promise. Win one moment, then repeat it. Not for show, not for anyone else's validation, but because you are worth following through for. And the man who wins those silent battles before the world even wakes up is the man who no longer needs to prove anything. He already knows who he is because he sees it in the way he begins. Self-respect is not a reward. It's the result of walking in alignment with your own word, one small act at a time. 7. Choose your energy, then protect it. Every day begins with a question most people never think to ask. What kind of energy am I bringing into this day? Not the energy dictated by deadlines or circumstances, but the energy you choose to embody and defend before the world interrupts. In the first 15 minutes after waking, your emotional posture is still forming, flexible, impressionable, unshaped by outside demands. And in that vulnerable space, you have a brief but powerful opportunity to set the tone. Because if you don't choose your energy, the world will. It will hand you urgency, anxiety, distraction, or someone else's chaos, and it won't ask for your permission. But the man who begins his day with intention is the man who cannot be moved so easily. Not because his life is easy, but because his mindset is anchored before it's tested. Energy is not just mood. It's how you think, how you speak, how you respond. It shapes the lens through which you see problems and, more importantly, yourself. When you wake up and immediately react, checking messages, bracing for stress, rushing into motion, you're not starting your day, you're surviving it. That survival mode becomes the default. And from that place, clarity shrinks, control slips, and your actions lose alignment. But when you pause first, even for a minute, and ask, what do I want to feel today? You flip the pattern. You switch from reactive to responsive, from automatic to aware, from emotionally fragile to emotionally resilient. This isn't about pretending to feel good. It's about choosing a standard and protecting it. You can choose calm, you can choose to focus, you can choose stillness. That doesn't mean you won't face chaos. It means chaos won't get the first word. And once you've claimed your internal state, your external behavior begins to reflect it. A man who chooses calm speaks slower. He listens more. He doesn't take offense easily because his center isn't up for negotiation. A man who chooses purpose doesn't rush blindly into busyness. He pauses. He scans the day. He moves deliberately. And that quality of movement, not speed but strength, starts from energy, not effort. Protecting that energy requires awareness, because even after you choose it, the world will try to steal it back. The first frustrated email, the unexpected interruption, the emotional pull of other people's urgency, they're all tests, and most people fail them before they even realize they're being tested. But if you've anchored yourself, if you've defined what energy you're guarding, then you respond instead of react. That's what makes the first few minutes of your morning so sacred. They're your shield, your signal, your chance to lead silently and deliberately before the noise arrives. You don't need a perfect system. You don't need to meditate for an hour, but you do need a standard. One word is enough. Presence, strength, focus, stillness. Choose it, speak it. Let it guide how you breathe, how you move, how you enter the day. Then defend it, gently but firmly. Don't hand it away to the first notification, the first opinion, the first inconvenience. Because that energy you carry, it's not just about how your morning feels. It's about what kind of person you're practicing to be. Every time you reclaim it, you reinforce that identity. You move from drifting into direction, from being shaped by the world to shaping your place in it. So tomorrow, before the weight of responsibility touches your shoulders, give yourself one moment. Name your energy, own it, and let it lead the way, not as a feeling to chase, but as a compass to follow. Because the man who chooses his state before the world speaks lives from a power the world cannot give or take. That's the quiet confidence of someone who doesn't just start the day, but starts it on his terms. The first 15 minutes of your day aren't just a routine. They're a quiet contract with the life you're building. Every small action, from the thought you choose to the breath you take, becomes a message to your nervous system. This is who I am, and this is how I move through the world. You don't need a perfect schedule or a flawless plan. What you need is presence, ownership, emotional clarity. That's what Stoic mornings give you. Not control over what happens, but control over how you show up. And when you begin each day with awareness, motion, silence, intention, and creation, you walk with a kind of self-respect that doesn't shake when the day gets hard. Your mornings are yours, not your phone's, not the world's. And when you protect them, you protect your energy, your mindset, and your direction. These habits don't make you superhuman. They simply make you honest with yourself, disciplined with your emotions, and stronger than the noise around you. So tomorrow morning, start slow, start clear, start like someone who knows their life is shaped in quiet, not chaos. And if this message resonated with you, I invite you to share your own story below, because someone else might need your strength too.